From KUNC and the NPR network, this is In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Before we get going today, I want to note that this episode includes discussion of a mass shooting and its aftermath. How does a community heal from the shock and grief of a mass shooting? And how can people who have lost loved ones find a way to move forward? That's the subject of a new podcast called Senseless. In it, journalist and host Erika Mahoney explores the aftermath of the mass shooting at a Boulder King Soopers grocery store in 2021. The podcast that Erika produced is deeply personal because Erika's father, Kevin Mahoney, was one of the 10 people killed in that shooting. Over the course of the 8-part series, Erika speaks with other people who lost loved ones that day, as well as police and prosecutors. Erika spoke with me earlier this year about why she felt driven to make this podcast. We're listening back to that conversation today.
I think that grief demands to be addressed. And if you're an artist, maybe you would want to paint a picture. Or if you are a musician, maybe you wanted to make a song. And so for me, being a journalist and being someone who, did storytelling, this just made so much sense. And I felt this calling, this higher calling to speak out.
Yeah.
I remember being at the 3rd anniversary. There was a remembrance ceremony and watching everyone get up on the stage and share their story about how this tragedy affected them. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just surrounded by these incredible stories of resilience. And I really wanted to be the one to tell them and share them. So it's very much my story alongside others.
Talk about the title of the podcast. Where did Senseless come from?
Not too long ago, we talked a lot about the phrase thoughts and prayers, and that it wasn't getting us anywhere. And senseless is another one of those words, senseless gun violence, senseless tragedy. And I wanted to just amplify that. This really, truly is senseless gun violence, but there's a lot of things that make sense that we can do to prevent this American tragedy. For me, senseless has an even deeper meaning in that when there's unexpected loss, you live in a stage of denial for so long. And I really struggled on a daily basis waking up and being like, wait, this happened? My dad is really gone. And it was just impossible to wrap my brain around it.
The first episode lays out what happened the day of the shooting. And you really bring listeners into your head and your emotional state as you learned what was unfolding.
Yeah.
You were at work at a public radio station in California. You got a call from your mom during the workday. Here's a clip.
Hi, Mom, I said. I can't talk. I'm on the air. Hi, Eri. Don't freak out, she said. There's an active shooter at King Soopers. My heart dropped into my stomach. My first thought was she's inside the grocery store. I pictured her crouching for cover in an aisle, and I tried to find the strength to say something, anything, that was remotely comforting. I love you so much, Mom. Oh, honey, I'm not in the store, she said softly. And then, what my mom said next shattered my world. Eri, she said, Dad went grocery shopping.
Erika, you are a journalist, and as journalists, we have this directive to not be a part of the story that we're reporting on. How did you get comfortable enough with this to tell your own story with this podcast?
I remember finding myself in the early aftermath on the other side of the story. Suddenly, my inbox was filling up with interview requests. And I'm not going to lie, it was really, really hard. And I was torn on whether I should speak out or not, or whether I even could. But in the end, I felt like I needed to say something. My dad was a human being. He should not have had to run for his life in a grocery store parking lot. And speaking out, I did say yes to interviews. It became clear that it would be disingenuous to pretend that I don't have any feelings about guns or pretend that this didn't happen to me. And it took a minute to step into like this new role. But when I did, I started to feel really whole, and it was a good feeling.
Throughout the series, Erika, you talk with a lot of folks in the community who were affected deeply by this, first responders, medical workers, grocery store employees. And I want to play a clip from Logan Smith, who was working at the Starbucks inside King Soopers on the day of the shooting. And I'll just warn listeners that this describes some of what he saw. Logan had gone out, saw the shooter, and then ran back into the store to use a landline to call 911.
Hi, I'm at the Table Mesa King Soopers at Broadway in Table Mesa.
I think a stray bullet flew past me because I hear the whew. And it's at that moment where I drop the phone. I drop the phone. The operator is still on the phone.
Are you there?
Erika, what did these conversations that you had reveal about the ripple effects of the shooting across Boulder and really across all of Colorado?
Yeah, sometimes as a journalist, it's a struggle to find enough people to interview for your story. And in this case, what's so sad is there are so many people to talk to. So if you think about like Logan was inside the store. He was an employee. Think about all the employees that were there working that day. Then think about all of the shoppers who were there shopping that day. Then think about the hundreds upon hundreds of first responders who flooded to the store. And then even beyond, the helpers, the therapists who showed up. I mean, statistically, fatalities from mass shootings are a much lower percentage of gun violence in America compared to homicides and suicides. But the thing about mass shootings is they cause an outsized community impact. And I think it's really time that we start paying attention to that massive toll that they create.
The podcast explores some of these lingering impacts that gun violence has on a community. What are some of those impacts that maybe don't get as much attention after the news coverage has faded away?
Yeah, and my podcast is certainly a deep dive into that because I really am raw and vulnerable in it. But I would say some of the things we don't see are, for me, the panic attacks. And that was so hard. I just had these panic attacks out of nowhere for months. Something as simple as like me being unable to go grocery shopping. I was 6 months pregnant when my dad was killed. And I had looked forward to pushing my little baby around in the shopping cart at the store. And suddenly I couldn't do that.
Wow.
So little things like that. But as well as things like searching for connection and trying to find new ways to honor my dad and all those little things like holidays that are so hard, Father's Day. Yeah, it's a life-changing event.
That was Erika Mahoney, who spoke with me earlier this year about her podcast, Senseless, about the aftermath of the 2021 King Soopers mass shooting in Boulder and the trial that followed. That case ended in guilty verdicts and 10 consecutive life sentences for the gunman. The entire series is available in podcast feeds now. We'll have a link in our show notes and at KUNC.org. That's it today for In The NoCo. I'm Erin O'Toole. Thanks so much for listening.